Well, welcome back into the another edition of Inside the Game. Jonathan alongside Mr. Nathan Wangler and Nathan. I thought by moving my spot here might be a little better because of the, but
You're
I
just trying to
guess
get the city
not.
backdrop, aren't you? You got the big buildings back behind you because you went to Chicago today. So, there you go.
I did. There you go. See,
And man, it is 8 in the morning, or it is 9 in the morning, so you're gonna get that sun glow coming in. But that's why that's the beauty of being on Streamyard, because you have the ability to put those preset backdrops back behind you, so you can be in whatever city you want to be in. You don't even have to go to Chicago, but you just want to
it
show off a
is.
little bit. I get it.
I don't know if I want to show off. I just, as much as I do about, I literally, it's funny because I know we're like 10 minutes late, but like legitimately, I got to talk about this because it's frustrating. You just asked me how my drive was. All right, so the drive relatively easy. Okay, I
That's
don't have a
good.
problem driving.
Chicago drive.
I got up at 3:30 this morning. I hopped in my car or the rental car, and I drove here. I pulled into Chicagoland area here 40 minutes ago. Okay, and I spent 25 minutes trying to find the hotel. And I've got Apple Maps and I've used Google. I've used them all. I even called a friend. I called the front desk. The front desk could not help me, Nathan. The front desk. I go. I'm right in front of Trump Tower. They're like, "Why are you there?" I go. That's where this thing took me. Um, you know, I
You're
I
not
go.
staying
I
in
know
Trump
I'm.
Tower, is what you're telling me.
Well, I'm not. I know I'm a registered Republican, but I don't know why it steered me there, right? but
Thanks for
but
sharing, by
like
the way.
like no joke. But I thought it'd be funny if I landed, but if I said that, but I did not
You're
try
landing
to
me
go
in hot
there.
water over here.
And so I'm talking to the front desk, and they're like, "We I don't know how to help you. You have to go further down." I go further down. What way? There's like seven different directions. What way do you want me to go? Either way, I ended up just parking and just kind of looking around, and finally saw a small Hyatt Regency sign off in the distance, and I did every possible U-turn and broke probably every traffic law to get into the valet area and park. And I went to checkout in 12 seconds. So, are you frozen
Unbelievable.
there, Wangler?
Unbelievable. I don't think I am. Are you frozen? You got me? Am I moving around now?
You're a little frozen on my end, but I don't know if that's if
Okay.
I just
All
don't know
right.
if it's
Well,
good in on the rest of the land.
frozen in here, frozen out
But
there.
either way,
I will
man.
say,
Hey, we're go ahead.
no, I'm just saying, you moving around and having to go different places. Navigating downtown Chicago is a treat sometimes. There are a lot of things I love about that city. I had my aunt grew up just outside of the city of Chicago, so growing up, we were always down there. My dad um, grew up a Cubs fan because they didn't want to put freaking lights on their stadium until what was it, the 90s, early 2000s, whatever it was that they finally put lights on the stadium. So he grew up in the Harry Carey era, always coming home, and he was always on anytime he got home from school. The Cubs would be playing a day game because they couldn't play night games. So he grew up a Chicago guy, had family in Chicago. So I was always there going to Cubs games. But even from a very young age, you start to understand navigating downtown Chicago is a treat. So just the fact that you got there relatively good traffic and got into where you needed to go was pretty good. But yeah, I just throwing that out there to anyone who wants to go to Chicago. Realize that you're gonna have to do a little uh walking around to figure out where you need to go. There's just too many darn people in that city.
Well, I was driving here, and anyone that knows driving into really any major city, excluding Detroit, you've got tolls. And I'm in a rental car, so I
Yep.
don't have like Easy Pass or anything like that. So you've got to use these tolls. And I pulled up to the first toll this morning, and there's like typically a line. There wasn't a very big line, for me this morning, but I get behind a car and the car's not moving. Like I'm sitting there for 5 minutes. You can hear a loudspeaker saying, "You can go now. You can go now." This person's not going. I had to reverse out of that line on the freeway and go into another. My guess is that person's probably still there, just based on what I. So um, but hey, I mean, you know what? The show must go on. We're in week one of our this new podcast, Inside the Game. And again, I am in Chicago right now. I'm here at the United Soccer Coaches Convention. I've got meetings set up with leagues and different businesses here throughout the next couple of days. So I'll take advantage of that.
So, how many
And
different leagues or teams are being represented at this conference then? Because I know we talked about obviously the 5 billion different leagues that are going on around the United States yesterday. What leagues are actually in attendance? Who are you actually planning on talking to? Because I know we continue to expand. We doing the MASL thing now, which, by the way, that's out there watching this right now, I know we're just kind of chatting back and forth. If you want to watch some entertaining soccer, watch Arena League Soccer. Man, that reminded me more of hockey when I was calling it, especially with the speed of everything going on. I do think they should include checking. I think that would be really entertaining. But maybe throw some shoulder pads on them. But no, I'm kidding. But the MASL has been really good. But what specific leagues you chatting with coming up today?
yeah, so I'm not going to go into the details of just the different meetings.
Yeah.
One is in the event that we don't get them to secure them. I don't want the league to think or anyone to think.
Right.
But to let's say this, we are finalizing a number of league deals that will bring either the production or both the production and the final game component to our platform here this year. So I'm here to solidify and finalize those. We'll talk about the ones we've already secured here in the coming days and weeks as part of this broadcast, as well as the other ones that we do. But this has been the United Soccer Coaches Convention has been the marquee, the marquee event in the United States for soccer for a very long time. And I came here a couple of years ago for the first time, and it really had a chance to kind of see the lay of the land and how things operate here. And I mean, to be fair, I think 95% of this is just coaches coming out and having a good time drinking and socializing. And the other 5% of it's the convention, right? Because at the end of the day, it's about it's about a community, right? And
Yeah.
obviously there's a ton of other things that happen here as well. Um, but you know what? I thought it'd be kind of a cool thing to talk about. We talk about inside the game. We've talked, a little bit about me and you. The last couple of days, we dove into the club conversation yesterday. We dove into another conversation here on Tuesday. Sorry, on Tuesday. In regards to the Grand Rapids thing. I wanted to today. Last night I was back out at Oakland, and I was doing a women's basketball game. I've talked about this before. I'm the lead play-by-play for women's basketball at Oakland, and I do all the other sports as well when they're being played. Um, but my thought process about this, and this is for the broadcasters out there, storylines, storylines.
They're
you
everything.
know, we 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 in this business, apologize, my alarm just went off.
Time to wake
From
up.
no, it's my daughter's bus stop alarm. But um, anyways, the storylines are really, really important. We try to find things within our research of preparing for games that will, best tell the picture going into the game and ultimately as the game is coming to an end, right? And
Mhm.
I'll give you a perfect example. I talked about this a little bit, I think, on Monday, when I was showing my spotting board for the matchup with Cleveland State and the Golden Grizzlies on Friday night. Um, you know, uh, when you get these program guides or the notes from the basketball teams or from the colleges, they send you 45 pages of notes that have player information. It has, information about coach and history, archives, things like that. And there's so much information to pull from to be able to figure out storylines. It's pretty crazy what you can come up with. And the biggest challenge that I have is on the career side of things, Nathan. And I'm not sure how you feel about this as well, but I struggle in career land when it comes to players because there's typically what 15 girls on a basketball team, 15 women, right? Give or take, and maybe it's a little bit more, maybe a little less. Maybe it's 12. And you go through and you have your season stats, right? There might be a season high you can pull, right? Their best game of the season. You try and go find the career stats. That's one thing that you just never can consistently find with these players. I just can't. I just can't find a career high, and that might be because they're freshmen, so their career high is their season high, and now it becomes their new career high. And obviously, as they go through their career in college, it'll start to get bigger. But I'm sitting here last night, and you're in the fourth quarter. You've got two players who in the mid 20s, right? You got a player in Macy Smith, the Golden Grizzlies. I think at that time she had 19 points. Maddie Skrupski, she had 22 at this point. Her career high was 29. That happened earlier this month. So I think it was the 29th of December. So in the last couple of weeks, that's easy to find. Macy Smith, can't find it. You Google it, you can't find it, right? And sometimes, yeah, she transferred from Mercyhurst. So and
how many years did she play there?
She played a couple of years there. When you look at Mercyhurst, there's nothing there. When I say nothing there, you have to go digging. You have to go digging for it, right? Because typically it's a season high. In most of these universities, they don't put the word career high anywhere. It's typically a season high. You know what I mean? So you have to go digging for this.
And that's the tough thing is not to interrupt you, but the hardest thing is, especially when it comes to good morning, Peter, what's going on? But typically the hardest thing is it all depends on the school and what they prioritize in terms of their athletics website. And that's the difficulty of when you're a sports broadcaster and you're getting into this. And I've run into this even with the people that work underneath me. They're like, well, this school's website is terrible. Yeah, you're going to run into that. Truth is that there's just some athletic departments that it's either they don't have the resources or the people to be able to really put those stats together in a way that is easy to find and easy to access. So it really, a lot of times you're at the mercy of whatever it is that they have, which sometimes requires a little extra digging. So that's something that I've always run into, specifically with stats, but also with bios too. And when you talk about storylines, here's the thing. Storylines, in my mind, are absolutely everything. That's what defines our profession. And the thing is you have to think of it this way. What is your target audience in what you're doing? In my mind, and some people think my target audience are friends and family members of the people that are playing the game. Yes and no. Or maybe it's the road parents, the people who are related to the people playing on the other team. Yes and no. My target audience, always, and this always kind of remains unchanged, is I like to imagine a person that is watching this game that has no prior knowledge of either of these two teams, that's just watching a basketball game. And so they're asking themselves when they come into it, because I know you're doing games at Oakland. People know who Oakland University is. Let's talk about, Cornerstone University and Indiana Tech. If someone's watching that game, why should they care? Why should they care if they're on the outside looking in? The parents, the friends, all of them understand why this game means something. To the person on the outside looking in, it's a long-time rivalry. Cornerstone used to own the rivalry. But the last time Cornerstone was on top in 2017, and then they underwent like a Marshall football kind of rebuild. Everybody left. Coach left, players left, people transferred out, people stopped playing. And so Cornerstone literally had to start over from the bottom up. Well, Indiana Tech never quite forgot about the upset loss they had in 2017. They rattled off the next 14 straight, 3 tournament victories, I think 4-5 regular season victories. Cornerstone hadn't had a winning season in 5-6 years. And so these 14 straight matchups, these 7 years of losing to this team has built all of that has built up to this moment here today. So I'm able to create the story of villain, hero, years and years of turmoil and trying to figure things out and really kind of deliver that emotion of the game to where if you're just a regular person on the outside watching this game, you can kind of grasp all of these things and all of these concepts and these storylines and these dots I'm creating to go, oh, so this game actually means a lot. And then obviously you carry that into your broadcast with being emotional and matching the moment on certain calls and having good energy and all those things that we chat about on this podcast and whenever we're broadcasting games live about how you want people to bring the energy. In my mind, that's the second part. The biggest thing is the setup and creating those storylines and cultivating those storylines. And the other thing that I'll say, and it's really, really important, and your board was great that you showed me the other day. I actually went back, and while I was cutting stuff up, I actually looked at it a little bit deeper. Stats are really important. Okay, important stats, and key spots, and being able to connect the dots and telling us why those stats matter. That's big. Yeah, anybody can list off stats. Why does that stat matter? So that's the other thing in my mind, because some of the younger kids, at least sometimes when I work with, they get so caught up in stats and figures that I'm like, if you're going to focus so hard on that, make sure that you're able to tie it together when the situation comes about. You know, for example, if a girl has a 30.5% 3-point shooting percentage, who cares? The only time that matters is if she's shooting the ball really well or she's maybe 0 for 5 from 3. That's when that stat matters in my mind.
Well, I'm not saying I don't disagree. I totally agree with you on that, by the way. But my perspective, apologize for being a phone call at the same time as nobody knows that we're on a podcast, I guess. But
They're not
my
watching,
perspective,
apparently.
I know my perspective is that I think it depends on the player, right? Again, every team has a Batman, right? And every team might have a Robin, right? So you've got your star, you've got your supporting role players, and then you've got players who are they carry the intangibles. They aren't going to carry a ton of stats, And I'll give you a perfect example of that, like Madison Royal Davis, offensively for the Golden Grizzlies, just doesn't have it. But defensively, she's been able to blocking shots. She leads the team in rebounds, especially on the defensive side of the game. So she's really, really important defensively for the team. And so coming out and talking about her field goal percentage, which is below average, doesn't make a lot of sense in the context of her role. However, like Macy Smith, who leads the team in 3-point percentage, right? I think she's somewhere in the neighborhood of like 35 to 38%, and she's a free throw. She's a 3-point shooter. When she's 0 for 10, that's a problem. Or more importantly, if she's only got a couple points in the game and she hasn't taken a lot of threes, you're like, well, she's like their leading 3-point taker. Why isn't she getting more looks? And that might be a number of reasons, right? Especially if you start talking, because most of the women's programs are playing a zone. They're playing a 2-3 zone in most cases, and you're set up to take threes. Like the zone is, you're basically saying take threes. You know what I mean?
The way you break it 2-3 is by going over it.
Yeah. So, apologize. I was choking my gum. The benefits of being alive, right? But so ultimately, the stat may or may not matter depending upon the player. But we obviously track every aspect of it, right? I mean, I have a sheet of so many different stats. I showed it to you guys. I showed it to everybody on Monday when we were doing our show. It's just that, like in real time, in real time, the stats that you have at your disposal, we could have a million of them, right? And when a team goes on a 12-2 run, for example, now the only way to really track the 12-2 run is if you have access to some kind of stat program, right? I mean, because unless you're sitting there manually tracking it, and starting a time is how long it's been, you literally are looking at like a live stat tracker and looking at it and saying, okay, yeah, they're on a 12-2 run over the last 5 minutes, 19 seconds. You know,
Yeah.
um,
And
you
that
know,
those are relevant stats that tell the story within the story. So that's you're right. That's kind of what I was getting at is you key in on those stats that go along with the story that you're trying to tell. And so that kind of can help you navigate and really explain to people who are watching what exactly is going on or what might be missing or the key trends or storylines. All that stuff all plays in together, but you found the stats that were relevant for the situation and for the particular player. Like, I'm not saying stats don't matter at all, but you got to find the ones that you can really hone in on. Like, it just bothers me, like, specifically, and I'll use the baseball example again. Whenever I'll listen to people's demos or whatever, and they can have a lot of really good stuff in there, but sometimes with every batter that comes up to the plate, they're like, so and so is, has a 234 batting average and is 373 slugging. Every single hitter. You don't have to do that, right? Find the stats that are the good ones to key in on, again, that go along with the storyline that you're trying to tell, and use those ones. Oh, here we go with the spotting board again.
yeah, I figured it
Be
would just be better for me to show it, but
see.
and again, I'll zoom in on this because I know it's probably hard for people to see. Um, but like again, and I use Maddie Skorupski. This is actually I actually updated this on my other computer, so it's not updated here on this one. But it shows and the things that are in green, right? I typically put things that are like team leading. If you like lead the team in something, I typically put that in green. And then if you lead in the league category, there's actually a category like below here, or not like a column below. Actually, it's a row below that would show like in orange because the Horizon League is kind of more of an orange color where they stand in the Horizon League. So like Maddie Skorupski, for example, she's averaging 17.2 points per game. That's actually good for second in the Horizon League in scoring. Now I think she's averaging 16.8 points per game or 16.9, and it's good for like third. So that kind of gives you like an idea. And why is that important? Why is that stat important? Well, it's important for a number of reasons. The first one is that, again, when we start talking about the top tier player, right? Our job as commentators is to call the game as we see it, but it's also to call the game as we know it, right? And if a player
Yeah.
like Maddie Skorupski, who last year was more of a support role, right? She had Brooke Curls Daniels, who was like the Horizon League Freshman Player of the year prior. Curls Daniels now is, I believe, at Michigan, I believe, and that she transferred to Michigan. So,
Mm-hmm.
she took over as the quote unquote like star of the program. And Maddie's doing a fantastic job. She's a transfer from Michigan State. She's got a lot of really good skills and she's not afraid to go to the basket, right? And she's not afraid to really, just try different things to get, buckets to fall. And obviously, if she leads the team in points per game, it's our job to talk about that. She also is she's a great passer. I mean, tremendous passer. She's able to find seams that most players don't see. So that's why she's like, I think she's like fifth or sixth in the Horizon League in assists. She
Mm-hmm.
steals the ball too. She will come in and she'll intercept. She'll steal. She's great at getting turnovers. I think she's second, or no, she's first in the league in steals. Right.
And the
So those are
physicality
the
ball that comes from her playing at Michigan
and
State, I'll tell you that much.
she's 5'7", so she's not like
Yeah.
this 6 foot. She's not a big, right? We talk about
Right.
bigs a lot in our world, but she's not a big. And so, but it's important that I know those things. It's important that I have an understanding of
Right.
that. But at
Yeah.
the same time, like these career stats, like your career. Now, again, if I went to Oak University, and I could put that on the screen too if I wanted to, but if I went to Oak University, screw it. Let's do it, man. Let's get crazy up in here. Okay. I know that that's not the way our screen's supposed to look, but I'm gonna put it back. I'll find another. And anytime you want to share your screen there, Wanger, you're more than welcome to. Like, you can do it too. Let me find it here. Okay. So I'll share this. Oopsies. Did I do it? I did. Okay. That's Macy Smith. So during the game last night, I was trying to figure this out last night. I was trying to figure out like her career stats. right? So here you go. You got your season highs. Here are your season highs. 23 is her season high. That was back against Cleary. For those who don't know, Cleary plays in the WAC, right? NAIA school. And I think that's right, the WAC.
Yep.
And it breaks down every game she's played this season. Now it shows career statistics. Okay, so it shows her 2024-25. So it shows her Oakland career. And again, in the moment, Nathan, you can look back and say, well, I could have gone in like 2 days ago and looked at her career stats from Mercyhurst and tried to figure out what her career game was there and blah, blah, blah. Hindsight being 2020, if I had 100 hours a week to do research, I would do it, but I don't. So a lot of times you're doing things based off of what's going on. I mean, most players don't have career nights every time they go out and play. They just don't, So I was trying to find it last night here on the fly. And okay, well, I know her career field goal percentages at Oakland. It's 34%. I know what her free throw percentages are, right? She's shooting from the line 62% this season, which by the way is terrible. Okay, it's terrible. You're shooting 6 from 10 at the line, not good, right? So it's things like that you're looking for. That you want to be able to find. And again, last night I wasn't in the position during live play to really kind of go find Mercyhurst and look that up. It just becomes somewhat, difficult to pay attention to a women's basketball game and be doing that. And again, if you start talking about like what they do at the next level, you have spotters, right?
Right.
You
Well,
have
and you also have
producers who are doing all this for you.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. And it's funny because I remember, I think it was last year, we went to Detroit. We went to Comerica, my broadcast partner and I, to celebrate the 30th anniversary of our minor league team, interview some of the guys. So it was cool. You get the whole media experience, down on the field, got to watch everybody warm up. Miggy was still playing, so I got to see him screwing around during, pregame stuff. He was checked out, man, at that point, but it was great to see him, and Javi was still there. And I know not great memories in Detroit, but, me being growing up a Cubs fan, watching him in the World Series in 2016 was special. All that to be said. Talked to a lot of the different guys that are playing with them now that were with us at one point. And then we went up into the media suite. Obviously there's food and everything else. And they have a section just outside of where the radio booth is that has the game notes, right? It has home game notes, road game notes, all this other information. And I'm looking at this, the Tigers notes, and we're going to go do a demo. So, right, we're sitting in the suite. We're essentially calling the Tigers game, but it's just a demo. We got permission to do it. And I'm looking at these Tigers notes and I'm reading through it. And I'm like, these are the most detailed things I've ever seen in my life. And again, we talked about the importance of finding stats that are relevant. Well, that's what they did in mass in these notes. I mean, it was like everything you could imagine. And I looked at these and I was like, how does someone like Dan Dickerson have the time to be able to put notes like these together? Like how does he have the time or the availability? And Dan, he kind of laughs. He goes, he doesn't. Someone puts that together for him. they pay people to do that for you. Once you get to those high levels, all of those things are where they need to be already. And it goes back to this whole thing of like coming up and putting those notes together. Stats matter, storylines matter, but do it your way. Right? Make the notes that are easily readable to you, where you know everything, where it's accessible, where you can find stuff, right? The biggest thing in my mind to have success on a broadcast is when you sit down, is everything set up where it needs to be? Are your game notes on the table? Are the tabs open that you need to be open? All of those things, because that's where people get caught off guard. You know what I mean? And once you get to the higher levels, if you're in the MLS or the NBA or the NHL or the MLB, again, someone will do your notes for you. But until that point, just make sure that you have notes that are, again, easily readable, accessible, and you know where everything is. There's no one size fits all in any of this. But another thing I will say about storylines, and I don't know how you feel about this one, JT, and it's really important, and it's hard to do when you're bouncing from one team to the next. I will admit, like a lot of the work that I do for you, I'm not working for one team the whole year. I'm not hopping on a bus and traveling with. I'm doing this high school team, this arena game, this, so it's this side of it is not as easy to do. And I will admit it's not possible all the time, but if you have the availability, and that's why I do additional notes on top of my boards, and I'll share my screen maybe tomorrow. Most of my stuff is saved on a hard drive. I don't like saving stuff on my computer. It's not connected. Anyway, long story. But personal anecdotes are another thing. It's a little thing, but personal stories, personal anecdotes, stuff that you've learned from talking with people, talking to people, those things can make a really, really big difference in how you are viewed as a storyteller. I'll give you an example. We had a player for the Whitecaps last year. We were on the road in Great Lakes, I believe, Midland, right? So the middle of Michigan. Oh, no, wait, take it back. I believe they were in Lake County. So that's East Lake, Ohio. So it's just outside of Cleveland. Busy area, a little more rural, but it's a pretty busy area. Leaving the stadium is going to cross the road, get smoked by a car. One of our relief pitchers, right? Does a little flip in the air, lands on the ground. Nothing happens. Everything checks out injury-wise, doesn't even have a concussion, which thank God.
Wow.
We did not tell that story, right? Initially, we waited until the end of the season because we're going to wait until, this is far enough apart so that the Tigers don't end up killing us for telling this story, because Tigers player development would not be happy if we were to just spout off about that. We did eventually end up telling the story live on air, and people really got a kick out of it. And even the family got a kick out of it. They thought it was entertaining. But it's those little things and the other little things about them growing up. I remember telling a story about another player I used to have, about how there was a local news from where he was. I believe he was Oklahoma City, but they had written a story about this kid growing up because him and his brothers were renowned in this town for breaking windows in this specific neighborhood. Right now, think two big baseball players. Like, they were probably playing with tennis balls and whatever they had back then. But I think they broke like 6 windows in one summer or something like that. Like, their parents were just paying for everybody's freaking new windows around the neighborhood because they just kept breaking them. That's a story no one else, or not a lot of other people are going to be able to find and tell. And I remember them going out of their way to be like, that was one of the coolest things we've ever heard talked about live. And I think it's one of the reasons why some of the OGs, if you will, in the broadcast industry, you think of the Vin Scullys, their ability to interweave a story into their play-by-play and really kind of give color to what it is that's in front of them and the people that are behind those uniforms. Because we get so caught up in numbers, and it's like, yeah, okay, what's his batting average? Cool. Everybody knows that. Everybody in this stadium right now can say the thing that you just said. What can you find on this person? What story can you find? What conversation can you highlight? What can you talk about that is different than what any of the 8,000 people in the stands can talk about right now? That's what's going to separate you from the rest of the crop. And that's what, when we talk about storylines, that's where it comes up big, at least in my mind. And again, you can't do that for every single game, because sometimes you're bouncing from A to B to C and you don't have the time to really, really put into learning that much more about the people that you're calling games for. But when you do have that opportunity, that's what's going to separate you. And so, it's two-sided, right? The numbers of the game, the logistics of the game, that's important. But it's also finding the personal stories about the players that you're covering that will make them feel like you are their guy. And that's the biggest thing. You got to make the people that you're broadcasting for, if you can be, number one, a good enough person, but number two, good enough at your job to where they can look at you and go, well, that's our guy. That's our journalist. That's our reporter. That's our announcer. Then you're going to be in a really good spot. Because at the end of the day, JT, we are also journalists. That is our job, but we are team journalists. We are not, news journalists. I'm not going to crime scenes, interviewing families, after someone just died. Thankfully, I thought about it for a second. I watched that Jeff Daniels TV show, The Newsroom, with I think what was it? Olivia Munn was in it or something. I don't know, but I
Yep.
watched that for a little bit, and I was like, that'd be cool. But thankfully, I ended up choosing sports because typically that's feel good stories for people. But that's the other side of it too. Personal anecdotes in my mind, being able to tell the story of the people in the game is extremely important. I think it's everything in my mind.
No, and I again I think no, I think that the best part about this show for us is that we can kind of get into the nuances of what we do, right? Outside of just talking about soccer, right? Or talking about the game. And because we're broadcasters, and we are going to have some things that we can talk about, things that are top of mind that can drive you nuts or make you super excited. I mean, last night from a storyline standpoint, the if I look at the storylines just from the what has happened on the court, nothing off the court, right? If I look at Golden Grizzlies, what happened on the court this past weekend? On Friday, they beat a team they hadn't beaten in 7 years, 2,869 days. They come back on Sunday, they lose to a team by 40 points. They didn't score more than 37 points on Sunday. They scored 71 on Friday. They couldn't muster up more than 37 on Sunday. Then we go to yesterday. Now that's a game that, from a storyline standpoint, okay, we know this, and if you're not new to sports, or if you are new to sports, I guess you're going to hear this. From a former coach and myself, the biggest challenge that I had as a coach was helping my team overcome a very big game with a big outcome. For example, you play your crosstown rival. There's a lot of emotion involved in that. It's a lot on the line as far as the community, the whole 9 yards. You have to now respond in the next game with the same level of composure, energy, the whole 9 yards. It's really hard to do. We call it the hangover. All right. So, and it happens at all sports. It happens at all levels. You can see it a lot. Matter of fact, if you heard a factor or some statistics this year about the Lions, was that any team that played the Lions, the very next game, they lost because they got beat up, right? So that I'm not sure the exact statistic behind it, but I know I heard a lot of the pundits talking about is how after every game the Lions played this season, the other team who played the Lions, they got beat up the next game. They could not muster together the normal stats that they would have in other games. And the reason why I bring this up is, again, they lost by 40 points on Sunday. A team that beat the number one team in the league, and they couldn't muster up more than 37 points. So it's a game that Sunday game, almost you just want to completely forget it even happened. And that's how bad it was, right? You don't even want to, like, it's gone. You talk about it for 10 minutes and then you get on to the next thing, because there's no reason to relive that game on any level. What can you take away from a 40-point loss? There's nothing that you can take away from that loss. So you move on. So yesterday in our pregame show, we're talking about that. We're like, this is a game they need to forget. They need to forget Sunday ever happened. And today is all about, being resilient and going out there and putting on a good show and figuring out how to win this basketball game. And they came out in the first quarter, they scored 21 points, and then the other team, IU Indy, who is 3-12, they're 2-4 in the league as of yesterday, prior to yesterday. They scored 9 points. So it's 21-9 going into the second quarter. All right, 21-9. In the second quarter, the Golden Grizzlies allowed them to score 26 points. They scored 21. So at the end of the first half, I think it was like 47-46. No, it was 42. I apologize. It was 42 to 35. That was the halftime score. Okay. Going to the third quarter, it was 24-10 in favor of IU Indy. All right. So they went from scoring 21 points in both quarters, the first two quarters, to scoring 10. And then in the final quarter, it was 20-21, and Oakland scored more points than IU Indy, but they fell short. They lost by a score of 79-73. And it's a game that they had no business losing. No business losing. And as commentators, where my job is to call for Oakland. I'm supposed to be neutral, but I'm also the home play-by-play. extremely frustrating to sit in that chair and to watch a team just collapse in front of you. And for no reason, and you can't put your finger on it. They were last night. Their field goal percentage. You'd think that they had a bad night or off night. Okay, field goal percentage was 46.3%. Nathan, other team was 48%. Both teams were above average, above their brand. I think the Golden Grizzlies are typically shooting 39% from the field. They were above that, right? So it wasn't about that. You look at it, well, what's the difference? Well, last night for the Golden Grizzlies, they allowed it was second chance points that killed them. Second chance points last night is what did them in. If I look at the second chance points in the team stats last night, it's right here. Where'd it go? I just had it here. I swear. Okay, here we go. It was 14-10, and then it was fast break points, 13-4 in favor of the Jaguars. Those 9 points on fast break and the 4 second chance points is what killed them last night.
Mm-hmm.
What killed them. And we talk about in the broadcast, and because defensively, I mean, you lost by 7 points, 6 points, whatever it was. It sucks because you sit here and you're like, man, you're rooting for this team, right? You want them to win, right? Because the more they win, then the more energy, the more emotion, the more the likelihood of them maybe even hosting a tournament game here in March, it becomes a real thing. And as a commentator, that's what you want, right? I mean, and something that I thought that maybe would be kind of cool for me to talk about is kind of like, what is the best game that you've ever called? Like, what is like the it could be like the level, it could be the type of game, it could be the situation, it could be, hey, I called a no hitter. What is that best game? Like we as commentators, you want to be involved in something that is going to be historic. I mean, think about Al Michaels, right? You think that guy back in 1980 was going, do you believe in miracles? Think that guy was thinking that was the game that was going to be the game that he would be known. Right? Do you believe in? I mean, like that's that game. Because if you go into that game as Al Michaels, they're going to get their asses kicked.
Yeah,
your storyline's up and down.
You're right, and that's the thing. Like typically, is in big moments like that, and I always recommend this: script out your big calls. If you know you're going to get a championship call, script it out. And that's what, if a young Al Michaels in that situation, in those waning seconds, in a sport like hockey where there's not a lot of stoppage time or like we're going to take a commercial here, right? In that moment, you're coming down the line against the greatest hockey team ever assembled, ever in the world, against a group of 22-year-olds, and they're able to win it. And we can wax poetic about that call. Everything about that call from beginning to end, I think, is the greatest single broadcasting moment in the history of sports. But anyways, continue with what you were saying.
Well, I was just saying that. I mean, it's these games where you're like, man, that should be a blow. How about Dan Dickerson when was it Galarraga, the no hitter, the no that was called back by right? I Jim Joyce.
Mm-hmm.
But here you are, you're calling a no hitter, right? I mean, Galarraga's having an unbelievable, actually, it was a perfect game if I'm not mistaken. It wasn't a no hitter. It was a perfect game he was pitching, and it comes down to this last second play, right at home at first base, and Galarraga is obviously screwed, right? And now you're sitting here going, holy crap, like, you're sitting in that chair and you're going, I got to make a meal. I got to make something out of this. I mean, there's so much that can be said in that moment. And there's not a single thing that can prepare you for what you have to say there. Like, there's nothing. I mean, because we're all like, honestly, the average person is going, no, you effed Galarraga, the effort. Yeah. Here you are, Dan Dickerson. You got to go. Wow. Like what? Like, I mean, like, wow. I mean, right. You have to find a way. I remember it was a couple of years ago when the cornerback or safety Hamlin. I'm not saying that right.
DeMar.
Got hit in the chest. Yeah,
Hmm.
he got hit in the chest, and he went out, and they were doing CPR on the sideline, right? And I remember it was a Monday Night Football game, so it was not Joe Buck at that time. It was whoever the Monday Night crew was. I think it was Monday Night Football where it happened, and they were
Hmm.
talking about how the people who were doing the commentators, and again, I'd have to go back and look who it was, how they did a really good job of just trying to keep things kind of rolling where it didn't seem like they were trying to do too much with it, right? They're kind of letting the moment just kind of play out and kind of more or less be kind of bystanders in it, and just kind of giving you some things here and there, but they didn't really try to overtake the moment. Because we as commentators, we try to, we get, again, let's be honest, those are moments where we can kind of get like, oh shit, like, oh shit moments. And so you just it's hard. It's hard for us, I think, to navigate those moments. And obviously, the more games you do, and the more experiences you have, then obviously those things will get better. But and you're more likely to have success in them. Um, but yeah, that's a question I want to ask you. What is, if you look at all the games that you've done, Nathan, all the games, what is the game, like the single game, maybe there's a single moment in a game that you will, like, I will never forget that moment for as long as I live?
Um, well, people will know his name in Detroit. I know this without a doubt. Um, because he is one of the biggest baseball prospects we've seen in quite some time. Um, and so much so to the point to where he's generated, I believe, I don't know how many millions of followers on social media, but he is like the new generation's baseball player, and that's Max Clark. Um, Came to West Michigan after playing down in Lakeland. Obviously, came up with Kevin McGonigal, another one of our top prospects, someone that I think maybe sometimes doesn't get as many of the headlines as he deserves. But this was long awaited because he was down in low A for the longest time, wasn't hitting well to begin the year, was not. And people were on him like peanut butter and jelly. Like, Detroit is a fan base that if you don't produce, I know we always talk about Philly and everything like that. Believe me, they'll in the D, they'll still get on you. And they got on him bad. And he ended up turning things around, became one of the best run producers in the Florida State League down in low A. And then he came up to West Michigan. And the thing is about broadcasting baseball in Grand Rapids, there's an understanding because we are one of the best minor league markets in America. And there's no place really where that shines more outside of the Grand Rapids Griffins and at the West Michigan Whitecaps, because we bring the crowds like that. I mean, it really should be a AA, AAA town. But Max comes and he rolls up with Kevin McGonigal, and they both get called up at the same exact time. And with the renaissance within the Tigers, what they did at the major league level this year is just the start. They have one of the best minor league farm systems. They got some bona fide superstars coming up the ladder, Max Clark being one of them. There's just a different energy around the team and around the organization right now. Obviously, they got to figure some things out, but the way that they've developed players, it's starting to resemble some of the other major players in Major League Baseball, the Dodgers, the Rays, the Astros, so on and so forth. But Max is kind of the headliner of all that. And again, he comes up huge on TikTok, huge on social media. The kids love him. I mean, we're talking thousands of young kids with Tigers jerseys and Max Clark stuff. I haven't seen this many young Tigers fans since I was that age. I mean, it's almost kind of like Notre Dame football, right? You don't see a lot of 11-year-olds walking around with Notre Dame football jerseys on anymore because they just haven't been relevant since the early 90s and 80s. That's literally where the Tigers are. When Max came up, different story. There was a different energy in the building. I think we had 8,085, maybe 8, something like that. The first night he was there. I mean, it was real, and the energy was real. And I remember when his first AB, he came up, people were just going nuts. And so that whole game, you just get a feeling as a broadcaster, and we go from different levels all the time, right? I go from broadcasting soccer for Grace Bible Institution to go to broadcasting baseball games for guys with $8 million signing bonuses, right? Like this is kind of the duality of sports broadcasting. You're going to cover all different levels, and I advise that you do. But the energy was off the building, standing ovation, everything like that. He's in the game, but it feels like a major league game that night. That was the point of what I was saying. He comes up to bat later in that game. And mind you, we're playing one of the teams that has the best pitching staff, one of the best pitching staffs in all of minor league baseball. And they're good. They're good. And we're down late in that game. And I believe we got 2 runners on. We're down by 2. Max is up to bat. I believe we're down to our final out, if I'm not mistaken, 9th inning. And so it's like, okay, like this is, it's his first game here. Everybody's been patiently awaiting, the arrival of the chosen one in the Tigers minor league system. He's finally here. What can he do? I believe he was down to his last strike. I think the pitcher hit him with a slider, swung and missed at it. It was a really good pitch. And so automatically in Max's brain, he's just like, okay, he's going to go back to it. He went back to it. Deposits it down the right field line. 2 guys end up coming around to score. Max slides into third safely with a triple. The noise in the building was so loud that it literally broke our equipment. I had to kind of dive across the table to yank down our field microphone so that we could actually hear the call. Because if I didn't, it would have completely drowned us out. It would not have happened. And then the next play, we end up walking it off and winning it. And it was in that moment that there are certain wins that you look back on and you're like, okay, that was the moment that launched the Tigers, this minor league team, everything else in the new direction. And I'll tell you right now, winning is not the priority in minor league baseball. Player development is. And so when we got him and he came and he delivered that moment in his first AB, and again, it's unique the fact that we're a minor league team in the same state as our major league team. It's a blessing because it means that the people coming out to watch the game are also fans of the team that these guys will be going to. We're not like the Great Lakes Loons where our team's in Los Angeles. It's a little bit different. So the energy around not just that moment, but seeing him come up and do what he did, the supreme confidence and the kind of player that we're like, okay, this is a guy that can headline a franchise for 10, 15, 20 years in Major League Baseball if you're able to keep him around. And he does that in front of all of these young fans who, JT, they don't know. They don't know what it's like to be a Tigers fan. They truly don't. But that was their experience, and they saw him, and now all of them are going home like, I love Max Clark, and I love the Detroit Tigers. And that's an awesome thing to me because it's the young guns coming out in the spirit, in the energy around the Tigers organization right now, again, is something we haven't seen in decades. It's been a long, well, not decades, I would say a decade, but it's been a long time since we've seen that. So Max delivering that moment in that building and that energy and being down on the field, interviewing him after the game. I mean, you get that feeling that someone's looking at you. We'll times that by 7,000 because everyone's trying to riot just to get his signature and talk to him. So that game was probably the most surreal. I have other examples of ones that were really cool. Did a game at the Big House, football game at the Big House that ended up going down to the wire and some other things. But that's the one that really sticks out, at least in my mind.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very, very cool.
So,
I don't have that same story as you do, but what I will say is this, is we have a show tomorrow, and I will share with you my story tomorrow. It is just at past 10 o'clock here in the morning, and we'll leave a little bit of a cliffhanger. If you like listening and watching what we have to say, hit that subscribe button, like us, and share this with your friends and family. We'll be back at it again tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 o'clock Central. We're excited to get episode number 5 rolling here tomorrow, man.
Yeah, we'll do a little mailbag, talk a little bit more about some of our broadcasting experience. You and me, we'll just talk, and whoever wants to listen, they can listen.
Darn right. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. And don't forget, subscribe, watch us on Roku TV as well as on YouTube, where you can listen on Apple or Spotify or any listening platform that you desire. We'll see you next time.